Inside this room, all of my dreams become realities, and some of my realities become dreams.
What in the wide, wide world of sports is going on here?
Alive! It's alive! It's alive!
You are listening to The Wilder Ride, getting wilder by the minute. Here are your hosts, Alan Sanders and Walt Murray.
And welcome back, everyone, to The Wilder Ride, where we are getting wilder by the minute. It's a podcast where we break down and celebrate the films of Gene Wilder 1 minute at a time, and we are making our way through Season 1, our inaugural season. We are focusing on the film Young Frankenstein. I'm Alan Sanders, one of your hosts.
And I'm Walt Murray, your co-host.
And joining us today is someone who might have a little familiarity with what it's like to be working around dead things and or reanimating some of the dead things. We have actor Adam Boyer joining us. Adam, welcome to the podcast. Oh, hold on. You know what I got to do? I know what it is. Hold on, Adam.
I completely that all up.
There we go. So, yeah, apparently when I muted the volume for the video feedback, I also muted you.
Nice.
You are not the only technically challenged one here, but remember, I am the guru.
Yes, he works in radio professionally, so you can see what kind of show this is.
So I haven't been muted by better, is what you're telling me.
So let's try that intro. Let you respond. I'll give you the quick lead into that. We are joined by actor Adam Boyer. Adam, welcome to our podcast.
Hey, thank you. Thank you for having me, dead and alive.
We appreciate you taking time out of your busy working schedule. You are a working actor. Why don't you introduce our audience to who you are and maybe what they might have seen you in?
I'm the butcher of Terminus on The Walking Dead, and, lately the big one is I'm Bobby Dean on Ozark. But, yeah, got to be a drunk with Tom Hanks and Sully, and, I come in, usually do something terrible, and then get killed. That's pretty much.
A lot of actors can't figure out where they fit in, but you found your niche.
Yeah, I definitely found my niche. Apparently, I have one of those faces people just want to see die.
Well, let's remind everybody, with The Walking Dead, that was a really intense scene. We had everybody in Terminus. We had some of our main actors lined up on the trough, where we find out that the termites really, they're grilling barbecue out there, but that barbecue comes from humankind, not animal kind. And it was, I remember watching that scene. It was intense.
Yeah, it's funny. As a fan of the show, when I'm on something like that, because I was shooting it and I knew exactly what happened, doesn't seem as intense. So a little while later, when you go back and watch it, you realize, oh, wow, yeah, that was brutal. That's actually humans, not zombies. So that's really nasty and brutal. First time I watched it was like, all right, enough of me. Get to the story that I don't know about. Tell
us a little bit, because you obviously being on set, you've got a behind the scenes knowledge of working in film and television that's very similar, obviously, with the setups. And I would argue that a lot of our television shows are every bit motion pictures just told in installments. Tell us what it's like for our audience that, we're talking about The Wilder Ride, we're talking about Young Frankenstein, but let's just go behind the scenes. I think it's interesting you made a comment. It wasn't necessarily as intense because you were there on the set, 12 hours a day, every day, with the lights and the sound and the actors, and probably cutting up and working through that. So what was it like to do what would have been basically a 5-minute scene on television? How long did that take to shoot?
It was about a week.
A week for 5 minutes.
Yeah, exactly.
That's crazy.
I was there for about a week. And it varies. You can have, the general rule is, it breaks down 1 page equals 1 minute on a movie. And that might be, 1 episode for TV might be 2 weeks or so. That's usually the way they break it down. But then there's always the exceptions. One of my buddies always likes to say, the one line and Atlanta burned. Yeah, that's obviously a little longer when you show it than when you read Atlanta burned. And it also depends on kind of what set you're on. I've worked with Tyler Perry, and he is a producing machine. He makes a feature film every day. 90 pages in a day. And I thought it was a misprint. I said 89 3/4 pages. That can't be right. And then the next day I got my call sheet and it said 89.5 pages. And I went, good Lord.
Good night. And that has to just be an incredible pace.
The rest of the world does not work like that. The rest of the world is, like Ozark, almost a month per episode, between 3 weeks and a month per episode. But as you watch it too, it's an hour-long feature film. When you're watching it, it's not the old days where TV is kind of the fast food of the film industry. Now they're kind of blurring the lines much more. So you have shows like Stranger Things that's like you're watching a movie that's an hour long.
And told in installments. I remember growing up, Walt and I both I was born in the 70s, and then all the way up and through the 80s, we would watch miniseries on TV, which were sort of like real long movies for the television audience. And now with Netflix and Amazon and all these other on-demand services, you've got basically the same premise, but now you can go binge watch.
Exactly. Which, as a fan, has its drawbacks as well. Because, wow, I get to watch them all. This is fantastic. And then when you binge, you have to wait another year to watch the second season.
All right, Adam, let's get into Young Frankenstein. We are actually looking at minute number 21, and minute 21 actually starts with Igor yelling at the horses, steady, after rearing up when Frau Blucher introduced herself last Friday in the last minute, and it will end with our gathering cast in the large entryway of a very cool built set for this particular motion picture. It was not, Walt, a castle they found. They literally built the sets to shoot this movie.
Yeah, when I was doing research for this, I went out hoping to be able to find some castle that you could go visit that was actually the Young Frankenstein set, but no luck on that.
No, it's they built for this. It's the age of practical effects here in film. They didn't act in front of a big blue or green drape and then fill in the castle later.
No, it was all made for the camera.
Adam, for you as an actor being on set, you may have done a little of both, whether it's blue screen or on actual practical sets. Which do you prefer?
You know what? I don't really actually even have a preference. I'm not one of those actors that has to have the other actor there. I'm more of a make sure you're prepared when you show up. The first film I worked on, or second film I worked on, I had my most romantic scene that I had to do. My co-star, Leanne, was in makeup. So I did it to a C-stand. So it's, it's all, for me, it's all make-believe. It's fun. It's fun when you're there and everybody's, you got all these extras running around. Like I was a SWAT commander on this thing, Solace, and I had a whole team of guys who were actually cops. That's fun.
Yeah,
you really
that's pretty
feel like a SWAT commander when you have these guys who are like, oh, no, you want to hold the gun just like this. And, oh, okay. These guys know what they're talking about.
That's something that's interesting about what we're doing with contemporary film and television series like this versus when even back 20 years ago when I was doing more extra work and video production work. They are now, I see casting calls all the time saying, we need real doctors or we need real policemen, real firemen, real EMS. And I guess that just helps with the realism on the set.
Right. Even the extras and things like that, their mannerisms, what they're doing, if they really care about the film. If you have a guy who's an extra who's just playing a doctor, well, that guy looks like a doctor, and he's walking up a hall and he's doing whatever he would do as not a doctor. I mean, obviously, he's probably not done his research as an extra. Or if you have a doctor walking up the hall, I mean, he's probably checking charts or doing whatever it is, quirky little things that make him honest as a doctor without thinking about it.
And I imagine for you as the actor, as you mentioned, getting tips from people who do this day in and day out to help make your performance more realistic.
Absolutely. Research while you're sitting there. Yeah, that's great. That's a bonus.
Well, Adam, let me ask you, in this scene, we're introduced to Cloris Leachman, and she was born in 1926. She did a lot of the old school acting, but she's got 5 things in production or waiting to be released now. When you look at those actors and actresses who worked in those days, how do you compare them with the actors and actresses today?
It's interesting. Some of the things they did are incredible and take so much talent in so many different areas. I think as the film industry has grown so much, it's much more rare to find people who are talented in a broad spectrum of things, as opposed to personally, one of my favorite actors on the planet, probably my favorite actor on the planet, is a guy named Brendan Gleeson. And he's very specific about everything he does, but he is a true character actor. You're not going to find him singing and dancing in something. He is very specific about his work. You'll find him using a dialect that's so specific to a region. I mean, if you go there, you'd be like, oh, well, he's from there. But then the next movie he does from a completely different place with a different dialect.
Well, and for folks who maybe not know the actor names so well, but I imagine a very wide range of our audience would recognize one of his major roles in the Harry Potter series playing Mad-Eye Moody.
Yes. Oh, he was wonderful in that too.
I like actors like that who can change their accent on a dime. They can actually become and morph. And I mean, here's a guy born in Dublin, right, who's got a very strong accent, but he can morph as he needs to, and that takes talent.
Yeah, it's a very specific skill as well. Peter Mullen's another one that I worked with on Ozark, and he would be sitting there in between takes because he is as Scottish as they come. He'd be in between takes saying, "So we're going out and it's having a great team and it's we're going along." And they'd say rolling, and he'd turn and he'd look at me and drop that accent and just look at me and go, "Now, how do you know you were doing what you were doing?" So, sitting there in the scene going, "You're so good." Yeah. Oh, wait, I got to try and keep up.
Yeah. So a cut. Adam, you want to focus? He delivered his line. It's your turn.
You're Bobby Dean now. Oh, right. Bobby Dean.
Well, and Cloris Leachman was kind of the same way in this scene because her voice is very different. Her accent is very different than this character. And so it is amazing to me when I see that. And a lot of the people on The Walking Dead, the same thing. They're English or whatever, and they're speaking in this Southern accent. Yep.
Dialects are another whole fascinating, wonderful thing to me. I think you either have an ear for them or you don't. It doesn't mean you can't be a good actor if you don't, but I think certainly if you want to use them, you better be good.
Well, let's talk about Cloris Leachman's performance here, at least since we're introducing yet another character. She actually opened the door and we saw her on Friday, and so we're continuing the scene of young Frankenstein showing up at his great-grandfather's home estate. The horses rear up to her introducing herself. "I am Frau Blucher." And they rear. We don't think about it initially. Adam, do you remember watching Young Frankenstein the first time, how long it took to catch the joke that the horses are going to whinny every single time her name is mentioned?
I'm a little slower than most, so it might have been the second time I watched it before I really started catching it. I get sucked into things, and sometimes it's a really, really good thing to get sucked into them and not concentrate on them. But sometimes I get sucked in, and I'm just enjoying it in my own lost way. Horses neighing is funny anyway, or whinnying, excuse me. Whether it's replacing anything or not. It's just funny.
Going back and rewatching even just Young Frankenstein, or do you have any memories of what it was like as a comedy? Does this one stick with you? Is this one of your movies that you quote all the time? Where does it fall in your repertoire of comedy films in your background?
I love Wilder. Comedy to me is, a lot of it is making things very significant. And the way he uses white spaces, I think probably better than anyone. Everybody who's funny, or everyone who gets cast in comedy, obviously they're cast for a reason. They can usually deliver a line. The people who are really genius about it, like Wilder, are the people who take that white space in between the lines, and you're not really sure what he's going to hit you with. He takes a moment where she's enticing him and saying, "But you don't want to ruin all this by having sex." Essentially, I don't remember what the dialogue is.
When Elizabeth shows back up, and they have that scene up in his room.
Yeah, and he takes this long moment where he could go in 85 different directions. Where I studied, we call it a sax. It's this long, powerful, silent moment, and the direction he goes in, of course, where he's like, yes, I do. I would totally want to throw everything away. It's all, it's worth it.
Well, the comment we made last week, because we had this wonderful interchange between the introduction of Igor, Marty Feldman's character, is both those actors, you can tell, know how to use the pause to great effect. And so many actors today are afraid of that dead space, that white space, as you call it. And they use it to such comedic effect. It's great that editors, or at least the movie editor, decided let's leave a lot of these pauses right where they are so the audience can just be sitting there and either laughing silly and not miss the next line, or sit there in anticipation of what's coming next.
Yeah, that's kind of disappeared. There's a reason why the editors is considered the final rewrite, because now everybody wants, they want to get in and out in 90 minutes. They want to be so stimulated every second that they miss a lot of that stuff, I think. So even if you put them in your work, you go see the movie and it's clipped so quickly, it jumps from one thing to the next. That, yeah, either you're laughing and you're missing it, or you're not laughing because it was funnier when you took your time and they cut it up.
Well, let's continue then diving into this scene. We do introduce the joke that will be with us throughout. Every single time we hear Blucher, we're going to hear that horse whinnying, whether it's outside the castle, just outside the door here, throughout the rest. But I think what's funny in this scene is Frau Blucher, you already sense, first of all, she came out last minute in a more of an ominous coming out of the shadow. We see the fire burning behind her in the great fireplace through the crack in the door. And she puts on, well, what looks like to me, a very fake disposition where you realize, I don't think she's real happy that they have found the heir of the great Beaufort Frankenstein and, of course, the grandson of Victor Frankenstein.
Yeah, she definitely seems put off and not real happy about the fact that she has these visitors at the castle, and sure doesn't seem real happy about Inga.
Let me ask you this, Adam. When you watch this scene and you've got Cloris Leachman giving you this sort of death stare, what was your impression of her character when we first meet Frau Blucher?
Like I said, with the significance, but I think comedy, a lot of comedy is such significance. If someone took away that significance and was acting like that, they become pretty scary and intimidating. When they put that much significance on it, it's funny. That to me kind of sells it.
What I love about Cloris Leachman, and I think all the actors in this movie, they've all got theater in their background, which I think plays very well in a film like this. They know how to feed off of each other. There's this technique where you're not acting, you're reacting, and I think all of them do a fantastic job of never anticipating what's coming next.
Yeah, back to the editor, I guarantee you with a cast like that and what they wound up with, none of those takes were probably the same. They probably just had a blast trying to make each other laugh on set. I'm sure they had an incredible amount or had an incredible amount of outtakes. Because when you're doing live gigs like that, part of the fun is your audience in film is the actor that you're in the scene with. So they're trying to make each other laugh. I think that comes across very well.
Well, and that's an interesting thing, Adam. I've always wondered, as an actor, when you're playing to that, you've got the crew in there, you've got the camera, and you've got the other people, the other actors you're working with. How do you know that a joke works?
A lot of times you don't. A lot of times, no idea. Sometimes you do. Sometimes if the crew doesn't know anything about the script, a lot of times if crew knows script, they know, okay, this makes me laugh, so I'm going to walk out of here. So you really have no clue. Sometimes I was on The Real Reason and one of the crew guys didn't know anything about the scene. And it was one of the funniest scenes, well, probably the funniest scene in the movie. And he couldn't get a hold of himself. I think we had to do about 8 takes and then he finally had to leave. He had to leave set because he would just keep cracking up. You just kind of trust in your timing and hope that it translates that way. And then hope once again that you got one of the cool, good editors that makes you look even better.
Well, Walt, you said this last week, Mel Brooks had to buy handkerchiefs for a lot of the crew so they could stuff them in their mouths and not ruin takes.
Yeah, there were some, they said this whole crew, and you can hear it on some, I found on YouTube, a few of the outtakes, and there's one scene where about 4 times they had to stop because either the crew or the cast was laughing. And I mean, belly laughing at what was going on. So,
well, I mean, sometimes even if you read the script, because I've got the script here to see where they've taken things out, and it's kind of fun to see what was supposed to be in and not in. You'll see moments where it's like, I don't see how that joke's going to play out, but that's because you don't necessarily see the look you're going to get from the other actor or the makeup on the other actor and how they're going to pause and what they're going to do with their facial expression. I mean, Marty Feldman just by himself can make me laugh just by putting a funny face on the screen.
Yeah, it's definitely not necessarily the funniest joke that gets the biggest laugh. I mean, that's what, as actors, you got to bring to the table, something that they don't expect.
I guess you just hope as an actor that what they're laughing at was intended to be a joke.
Yeah.
Well, as we make our way through this minute number 21 here of Young Frankenstein, after Igor goes over to tend to the horses, we hear Dr. Frankenstein say, if you would, bring your bags and come on inside. And then he says, basically, after you, Frau Blucher. And there we get yet another, this is the third now, Winnie in the scene. So I think at this point, it's pretty well established. There's something up between Blucher and the horses. And we kind of played with it a little last week. Have you thought about it anymore? Like, over the weekend, we took a couple days off and now we're back.
Well, I watched this minute. several times yesterday when I was preparing. And when she turns to the camera and turns away from Dr. Frankenstein at this point, she really has a pained expression on her face. And you can even see she draws in her chin.
It's almost guilty. Like she's not, like she doesn't want to telegraph that there's something up between her and the horses.
Either she has tortured the horses or just the horses are tortured by her, but it is a painful expression on her face.
Mystery Secret is what we call that where I studied.
Mystery Secret. Almost sounds like a good title of a movie.
Yeah.
We like to be pretty redundant.
Well, the three actors then walk into the main entry area, and then we immediately cut to Marty Feldman's Igor character then walking in from the courtyard, and we get the idea that Marty Feldman now understands why the horses are doing what they're doing, but he wants to test it, Walt.
Yeah, and he turns around and throws a Blucher at him, and of course they jump like crazy, and he gives his typical, quick smile and dart off back into the building.
Remember how we said last week when you realized Igor was in charge, really? He was pushing all of the doctor's buttons. He was basically setting the tone. You realize he was messing with the doctor? I think that's his character. I mean, he's messing with the horses now.
He stirs the pot all the time. I would imagine he's somewhat like that in real life, too. But
the fact that he makes that mugging expression where he's just like, hee, look what I did. Yeah. And then he turns around and goes inside. We do get inside toward the very tail end of the minute. The last 9 seconds, we get to see this fantastic set of the entryway, the foyer, I don't know what you want to call it, of the castle. We've got a giant chandelier, typical candle-lit chandelier, sitting dead center above the screen, right at the top of the frame. We've got a staircase of stone leading up with no railing. We've got a huge fireplace with logs. I'm not talking about split wood, logs. The detail, coats of armor. You've got candles on the table. You've got... it looks like they found a real location. So set dressing to go along with the costume design really sets the tone. If there was any doubt, we have moved back in time.
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Set can absolutely make or break something like that. I played a meth dealer one time in this film, and set deck was so good that the sheriffs of Newborn County, 3 days after we wrapped shooting, busted my meth lab and found a bunch of rock candy. Literally rock candy.
But it looks like crystal meth.
Yeah. Well, and I've, I wonder when I watch different shows of how much of it is CGI'd, how much of it is real. And I guess on a lot of those types of things, you do recreate it. And of course, when this was shot in the early 70s, there was no CGI. Everything was real and live. So kudos to that crew that put this together, because it definitely takes you back to that 1931 Frankenstein feel.
The film, the Boris Karloff, the original, which is, again, what we've said early, they were trying to capture that same sense of the original Frankenstein.
It's hard to think that this movie was actually set in 1974, because they have definitely transported us back.
A couple of things to talk about as the as this minute begins to wind down. Well, we see it's definitely clear that Igor was playing with the doctor back on the steps of the train station, because he went to go grab the doctor's larger suitcase and decided, nope, I'm going to carry the smaller one, as if the bigger one was too heavy. We see him walking in, closing the door, whipping him around like there's nothing in him.
Yeah, which is probably true, but
probably was true.
But yeah, he's obviously played him again.
That was probably take 2 for fun, or take 3.
I mean, look, he's got one in each hand, so it looks like they're real heavy. Then he just rapidly throws one underneath his armpit. He's holding them both with one hand, turns around, closes the door, no problem whatsoever. So either the comedic bit is that there's nothing in these suitcases, or that maybe Igor is just some kind of a Superman underneath that hump.
They let you peek behind the curtain sometimes for the sake of the comedy. There's obviously nothing in this. So I'm going to show you, because it is a prop, and we're making a movie, and we're having fun doing it.
So the question I've got for you, Adam, as we wrap up minute number 1, because this drives me nuts when I'm watching anything, whether it's a major motion picture, a television commercial, or a television show. You can tell if there's coffee in the coffee cup, no matter what. I don't care. I can tell if there's something in it or not. So why do they do that? Is it because actors they don't want the actors to actually have anything in their cups? And because I don't like acting with an empty cup.
I think it varies from set to set. A friend of mine really got burned with coffee on set badly one time. So maybe that's what they're thinking. They want to try and avoid that. even if I'm drinking coffee, if they don't have any coffee, I'll have something in there. Why would I pretend? I'm always worried if there's nothing in there that the camera might pick it up, might see that there's nothing in there.
Yeah, from my perspective, that's what I see. I can tell the cup wouldn't go to your face that fast. It wouldn't tilt up that fast. You can even tell they're miming taking a swallow. Such a small little thing like that, and yet it drives me nuts when I see it on screen.
And here's the thing. If you can tell, that actor made a mistake.
Isn't that the truth?
There's no reason whatsoever why you should be able to tell that unless it was poorly portrayed. I mean, I hate to say that. Sorry. I don't mean to be slamming people, but it's like laughing honestly. Some things you can do and some things you can't. I know wonderful, wonderful actors who can't laugh honestly. You know, if you tell them to laugh, they get uncomfortable or for one reason or another, and it comes across this awkward where, you know, it's just not genuine. When things aren't genuine, they certainly explode and seem much bigger than they are on camera.
They call it acting, but like I said earlier, if we can tell that's what you're doing, you're not doing your job.
Exactly.
All right, Adam, as we wrap up minute 21 here, is there anything you wanted to add, anything in this minute that we might have missed, or anything in your notes maybe that we should talk about?
No, I think you guys got it all on that minute.
Walt, what about you?
No, it's a good setup minute. I think we've got some good stuff coming the next few minutes.
Well, Adam, I want to say thank you again for joining us on the podcast today. I'm assuming we can get you back here for a few more days?
I think you can.
Awesome. He must be between shows.
Must be.
Well, let's remind everybody here that you are listening to The Wilder Ride, getting wilder by the minute. And we want to do a special thank you to the website moviesbyminutes.com and the folks that run the adjoining Facebook group for all of you Movies by Minutes fans, whether you are making your own Movie by Minute podcast, or if you're just a fan of them and you just want to learn a little bit more of the behind the scenes. Those guys really coordinate and try to keep us all from stepping on each other's toes, and it's a great group if you're interested in doing something like this. So thanks to them for helping even put us on the right path.
Yeah, and if you like what you hear, we would really appreciate it if you'd go out to iTunes and find us there, The Wilder Ride. Tell us what you think so that your vote is tallied there. And also you can find us on Patreon, among other places, patreon.com/The Wilder Ride, if you would like to help us out with some of the cost for the show.
And come on back certainly tomorrow, because Frau Blucher is getting ready to pick up some candles, and we need to see where our cast is going in this big giant castle of von Frankenstein.
Frankenstein.
You had one job, Walt. One job. I had to build the fucking website. I had to build the social media.
Hey, you're just lucky I show up.
I didn't even make the fucking coffee.
Well, the coffee was good, too. So.
Oh, my God.